Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus, and I'm taking a big bad look at the first release and first combiner team member from independent company Warbotron. This is Airburst, who looks like he really wants to be Blastoff. By the way, there's all kinds of recent buzz and bluster about the distribution of this guy, but this video will be focusing on the toy and not the controversy. I cause enough of that as it is just by speaking into a microphone and pronouncing it controversy. Airburst's vehicle mode is an edgy and ridgy space shuttle cut from a similar cloth as many of the 2006 Galaxy Force and Classics Transformers. He's definitely a bit more streamlined, but gives the impression of a rectangle that's kind of been forced to work alongside some rounder angles. The colors are quite rather G1 Blastoff, with a milk chocolate hull and grape and violet detailings. The palette is a touch lighter than a lot of the results of a cursory Google image search, but I don't mind. There are a pair of guns mounted on the sides of the shuttle, and you can pop them off if you want. They also have ports under the wings if that's your aesthetic preference. There's also some landing gear down there with retractable rolling wheels in front, and totally static sculpted half circles in back. Why spend the parts count on rolling wheels for only half of the landing gear? I don't know, man. Also, the wings can, flap if you want. Whee! Anyway, Airburst also transforms into a robot. Starting off with some gratuitous parts leprosy, this guy blasts off into his bot mode through a fairly simple process. The leg slide does have a click on either end, it might be hard to activate the first few times, and I'm pleased to see a spot for the wings to peg in once they've finished wrapping around the shins. The arms are super straightforward, but the hands are a pain in the butt cheeks to fold out. Their joint is really stiff, and it's tricky to find a spot to grip without having already gotten them semi-unfolded. The nose cone and cockpit split apart, and the resulting shoulder pads are sometimes happier to pop off their ball joint rather than cleanly swivel around. The nose cone backpack has its own big drawback. There's no locking mechanism. It relies on joint friction to just chill out back there. Hold on, true believers. Now, you notice these backwards guns. That's because if you leave the guns on the shuttle mode and you just transform this guy, they end up here. As for the thing that you ripped off the back, do you have to remove it? No, you do not. Check this out. I'm just going to transform this guy as per mostly usual. Get these things back, get the feet all footed. And if you leave that jetpacky stuff on the shuttle mode and just split the legs, splits with them. Now, the wings don't fold up as cleanly and you have more junk back here, but you totally can just have this dude chilling out with, chunkier legs, but also with absolutely zero parts forming. You just might want to swivel these around. And blam! Airburst does not need to parts form, but it's in the instructions, and there's stuff to do with those chunks we ripped off, so the rest of this video is going to pretend like he did parts form. Just don't tell past me what I, the future me, have revealed to you. Otherwise, you're going to cause a time paradox, and it's going to go nuts. So, commenters, you got to learn how to keep a secret for the sake of the space-time continuum. Imagine Blastoff with his brightness values tweaked up ever so slightly, and you've got the gist of Airburst's robot mode. All that mid-2000s aesthetic amps itself up as nearly every surface is coated in sculpted detail that is made entirely out of ridges and corners. The base qualities of the toy are fairly on par and well done, though it's clear from other reviews that there's a bit of variability to the build quality, mostly focused on stuff like mold flash. There's a decent amount of paintwork, mostly subtle but mostly clean in application. Airburst proportions are also pretty good, aside from the slightly overly long forearms and vaguely small head. The head is a proper little Scramble City blockhead, though, and its light-piping powers are strong. Such a pretty color, too. I find myself lost in his eyes. Anyway, those rear shuttle mode chunks can be transformed into missile launchers, which can either peg into Airburst's forearms or flip out a handle for Airburst's fists. There are also some shin holes if you want to pop them down there instead. The little shuttle guns are also some pistol-ass pistols, with extending barrels that, well, they have a locking point, but it's really weak. This makes it way too easy to accidentally yank the whole barrel out of the gun, and is a most unfortunate oversight in plastic tolerance. While destined for his hands, these pistols can also occupy any peg hole you see fit. Let's do that old articulation hoedown! Warbotron's first figure, does he have a ball-jointed neck? Yes, he does. Decent range, too. What about his shoulders? Well, these shoulder pads are on ball joints, so you can actually make them waggle around or, make them go like, oh, I'm excited. I'm sad. But underneath them, you've got a simple forward and backward swivel. You've got, on a separate joint, an outward hinge. You've got a bicep swivel, and then a double-jointed elbow, although it doesn't really get to make use of that double joint super easily. Also, the elbow is kind of high up the arm, and it makes his forearms look enormous. His wrists can swivel, and he's got a kind of masterpiece-looking knuckle joint. Reminds me a whole lot of Hasui-san's Autobot cars like Prowl and Sideswipe. Also, this guy's chest can open up for the sake of colostomy bag action, and his waist has a clean swivel. His hips are universal joints that have no ratchets in them, and if you are like, hey, I can't move it forward, blap, now you can move it forward. You can also take a look at his junk. That's a little bit lewd. His thighs can swivel. His knees have a joint that reveals some stuff, and I kind of like that. I like joints that reveal stuff. There's some of that muck. I don't really mind that stuff, but a lot of people seem to be flipping out about it, so mine's got some of that on both sides. Gotta bust out them nail files, dudes. His knees are not double-jointed, and you might have noticed nothing in this guy is clicking. There's no ratchet action on this guy, and I think he sorely is asking for some. His feet can do some stuff, because the transformation results in them having kind of not a double joint, but more like a, what do you call it? One of these. And then a ball joint on the bottom. And then there's a separate mushroom peg swivel that kind of allows for a more cosmetic ankle tilt, although there is, if you don't use that thing, a little bit of one of them ankle tilts. Regardless, not very much of one, though. And if you're, like, messing around and doing some crazy poses, you can use these rear thruster things as adjustable heels to, you know, facilitate whatever it is you happen to be doing. Like, yo, he's walking forward and this leg is slightly more off the ground. We'd better adjust that. Now he can balance. His leg wings are folded up from the transformation, but FYI, you can pull them off if you want, and then, like, I don't know, stick them up on his arms and just get all crazy. Can you stick him up on his arms? No, you can't. I just assumed I could this entire time, but no, the holes are actually two different sizes. So you can pull these off for no reason. Let's say that you're really offended by the sight of these chunks on his shins, and you're like, no! No! Then you can do that. Also, you got severe issues. This is Warbotron's first release, and it is very strong for a debut piece. But with that stigma set aside, Airburst is easily described as entirely okay. As a standalone toy, he seems quite effective at having 2 modes and a basic posability loadout, along with a handful of weapons and some options of where to put them, but there's little about him that makes me say, wow! He's pretty fun to mess around with, but does not manage to pull a mad blender and escape the feeling of being a member of a combiner team first and foremost. Speaking of which, this guy's arm mode has a few things that kind of bug me. His robot arms and backpack all kind of hang there in space and do not lock together whatsoever. That's a prime spot that'll be handled in the full combine mode. It's right by the shoulder joint. Also, the hip and knee joints do not feel buff enough to deal with a lot of heavy lifting, and those are going to be the combiner's elbows. I hope Airburst is the odd man out and that his teammates have more solidity and strength in their combination forms. As the first Warbotron representative, Airburst delivers a double-edged message to me. It looks like their take on Bruticus will be made of figures that are, at worst, respectably built robot toys. But that's all. If you've got combiner fatigue or Bruticus fatigue, you'll probably see Airburst more as a symptom than a cure. But if you're ready for the biggest Bruticus yet, it looks like it'll be a decent ride. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and I am still incredibly amused at the idea of these guys combining into a behemoth named Warbotron. Just fills you with menace, doesn't it? I am Warbotron!